Why do people obey the law? From a rational choice perspective, well, it would be, well, because the risk of disobeying is too big. So I'm weighing costs and benefits, and I'm going to say I'm going to obey the law because I don't want to risk what the negative things that could happen if I commit a crime and get caught for it. Trait theory would say, well, I obey the law because I am inherently a person who follows the rules. And so that is what is about me. I am a rule follower. Structural theory would say, well, people obey the law, so I obey the law because I have access to legitimate opportunities, so I don't have to disobey the law. And learning theory would say, well, because my family and my peers are law-abiding, so that's what I learned how to do, so I obey the laws too. So crime is attractive. It can provide rewards and excitement. So that's why I asked the question, well, why do most people obey the law? And so that's what social control theory does, is it kind of flips it on its head. And it's not about why people commit crime. It's why people don't commit crime. So everyone has this potential to violate the law. Every single person has a point at which they would break the law. Some of that's just really high for some people in terms of what would have to actually, the stars would have to align for it to be the perfect opportunity. But everybody has a point at which they would violate the law. And society presents a lot of opportunities for crime. There's crime opportunities everywhere if you're looking for it and if you recognize it as an opportunity. So this begs the question then, well, why do we obey? And the general answer is that, well, because our behavior and desires are being controlled by some kind of internal and external forces that happen through socialization. So this means that it's being controlled by people's attachment and commitment to conventional institutions, to certain individuals, to social processes that we respect. And so the social control theory then in general just downplays causative factors in terms of criminal behavior. So it's not about what causes crime, it's about what stops it from happening. So it's a totally different view of crime from virtually every other theory of criminality. So thinking about sort of why a theory like this would have developed in the first place. Well, social control theory came into its own during about the 1960s. So what was happening around the 1960s? Well, you had the civil rights movement, you had anti-war protests, you had rock and roll music was coming out at that time, you had the beatniks and the hippies around, you had the Black Power movement that was happening, the feminist movement was around at that time. So for the very establishment types, it looks like the entire world is basically going to hell in a handbasket. Everything is out of control. The blacks in the South US, they're no longer satisfied with just being lynched or riding in the back of the bus, so they start the civil rights movement. People are getting a bit antsy about going off to Vietnam to be shot at by the Viet Cong, so they started protesting. A lot of them decide to dodge the draft by heading north to Canada. Go Canada. In fact, it seems that some of them are still hanging around there today. Women demanding to be liberated, burning their bras in protest on the street. At the same time, men were starting to grow their hair long, wear ornamental jewelry, long gowns that resembled dresses. It's easy to see why social control theory had its attractions, because things seemed out of control. So the question was, how can we get people back under control, back into sort of what people would consider normal behavior, which of course that normal changes. But at that time, there was so much that was out of control that this begged the question, how do we get people to follow the law again and to get back in control? So containment theory sort of falls under this social control idea. And ironically, the guy who came up with containment theory, his name is Reckless. But Walter Reckless came up with this, and he basically talked about how we have these containment forces that insulate youth in particular from these criminogenic influences. So we have two different types of containment. We have inner containment and outer containment. And inner containment is things like having a positive sense of self. This is developed within the family and typically is developed before adolescence. So by the time adolescence hits, this inner containment should be in place. And basically by having a positive self-image, you don't feel the need to go out and prove yourself through criminal behavior, and you're confident in your own ability to succeed in the ways that you've already planned to succeed. Then we have outer containment. And outer containment is things like supervision and discipline, and it's really a reflection of strong social relationships with teachers, with priests, and other sources of conventional socialization. If we have this outer containment, it's because we have these strong social relationships and bonds. And then Reckless also talked about how there's pushes and pulls to crime. And so pushes are things that push you out and sort of looking for something else because there's something wrong with your own life the way it is right now. So it'd be things like if you're not content with your living conditions, or there's family conflict, if there's aggressiveness or hostility in the person as a trait, they might be more likely to be pushed toward looking for something where they can use that to their advantage. Also, frustration or strain would be a push to crime. Boredom might be a push to crime. Typically, just lack of opportunities would be a push to crime. And then pulls then are things that are pulling people into crime and to see crime as positive outlook. And so pulls would be things like delinquent peers and subcultures, basically people saying, yes, come join us. Look at all the ways that you can succeed if you come and join, our gang, or if you come and, commit property crimes with me or whatever. And so there's pushes that push you towards crime, and then there are pulls that pull you towards it. So then Travis Hirschi came up with social bond theory. And so this was basically the idea that criminality happens when those ties that we have to society become weak. So we're all basically being controlled until those ties are not strong enough to control us anymore. And most of us, have those strong ties all through our life. But some of us, if you have weak ties, then you're much more likely to commit crimes because you don't have something stopping you. So if individuals have strong social bonds with society, then they're less likely to commit crimes. If we have weak social bonds, we're more likely to commit crimes. So there were 4 elements of the social bond, according to Travis Hirschi. So attachment, commitment, involvement, belief. So attachment is this idea that these are ties of affection and respect to other people. So you have sensitivity and interest in other people. If you have no attachment, you're basically a psychopath because either you care about nobody but yourself, or you're like a hermit in the woods that has like zero attachment to anybody. So this attachment is typically with family, but it can be with teachers, peers, community leaders, anybody that you basically care about that's part of conventional society. And then commitment is the amount of time and energy and effort that you put in to socially acceptable and pro-social things. So you're doing things like putting time into your education. You're putting the time to train yourself in your trade or your profession, and to get professional development, and to work and get experience, and you get a really good job. And basically that commitment means that you don't want to jeopardize what you've worked for, because you've put so much time and energy and effort into working your way up the way you're supposed to, and so you don't want to risk that. So the more commitment you've put into society, the less likely you are to want to risk that by committing crime. Involvement is this idea of the amount of time that's actually spent in pro-social activities. So school, recreational activities with family, anything where the time is occupied by pro-social activity basically leaves little time for illegal behavior. If you basically keep kids busy, they can't go out and do something illegal. And so it's the idle hands sort of thing. So involvement basically is how much time are you spending in pro-social activity, which leaves little to do antisocial activity. And then belief is this idea of having shared beliefs and shared values with larger society. So by believing things like it's wrong to steal, or people should respect the law, if you inherently believe that, then you're less likely to steal or to break a law. So people within the same social setting develop common values and beliefs, and that's just a natural human process. And so if you are part of that, society, then you are going to develop very shared values, and that's just a natural thing. So then these 4 elements of the of the social bond, you have the more of each of these that you have to society, the less likely you are to commit crime. So if you have certain numbers of attachments, even if it's just a couple that just a few people that you actually care about, or you could have lots of friends and lots of people that you care about. But if you have attachment to society, and then you also have put in the time and energy to do things right, and you spend a lot of time in pro-social activities, you don't really have time to go out and commit crimes, and you actually share the belief system of larger society, then the more of those 4 things that you have, the stronger your bond to society, the less likely you are to commit crimes. And that's social control theories.